In Norse mythology, Odin, the father of the gods, ruled the 9 kingdoms. The giant world tree contains all things in the world, and everyone's fate is woven in the hands of the 3 goddesses of fate. Every Norse warrior is not afraid to die, for that is the only way to open the door to Valkyrie's temple. It was under the rule of this belief that the Viking warriors slaughtered the world like beasts, writing a legend of sword and blood. Hello, everyone. Today, Josie's is here to share with you 2022 American epic historical action thriller, The Northman. Josie's channel is all about discovering and introducing niche movies dedicated to the unique you. So please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any updates. The story takes place around the 8th century AD. King Sigurd of the Kingdom of Rashif, a Norse raven god of war known as the Ring Giver, was a prominent figure in the land. He and his men used to burn, kill, plunder, and conquer numerous booty and slaves to strengthen their kingdom. Today, Sigurd is back again, and the country is celebrating, with its people lining the streets to welcome their king and army home. The king presented his son Grim with a silver ring, which was pulled from the neck of another prince to represent the kingdom's eternal prosperity. While everyone was celebrating, Hasem, the king's brother, burst in. Compared with the revered king, Hasem is a butcher who delights in bloodshed and is nicknamed the Brutal, and his look at the king hints at resentment and ambition. The people celebrated this great victory, but the king was not happy. He was wounded in the midriff by his 3 royal highnesses and feared to die soon, so he hoped to pass the throne to his son Grim as soon as possible. Late at night, old King Sigurd took his son to the temple of Odin. The Vikings had a tradition of performing a special ritual before they came to the throne. Under the spell of Siamir, the Grim drank wine and became a honey-eating wolf, representing both the strength of a bear and the brightness of a wolf. Then the king showed his wound to his son, and the son shed the last weak tear of his life. All of them of royal blood have the ability to feel in their blood the family world tree, where all the glory and death of the family lie. In his father's wounds, Grim saw his fate as king and vowed to defend the honor of his family and kingdom, while aiming high and expanding his family. At the end of the ceremony, Sigurd came out of the temple with his son to celebrate him as the new king, but just as he was saying so, a sword shot from a distance struck Heizigu in the chest. The next moment, a band of fierce knights galloped up and surrounded the old king. The leader of this group of rebels came out from the crowd. No one else is the king's brother Hasem. He was a bastard, because of their identity, has not been the first king's attention, so coveted throne for many years, finally broke out today. Sigurd tells Grim to run. Grim hid, horrified to discover that the man who killed his father turned out to be his own uncle Hasem. He apparently had no appetite for power, and he killed his own brother. Not only that, Hasem ordered his men must be exterminated. Galloping for his life, Grim was overtaken by a soldier who threw him to the ground. In the moment of crisis, he pulled out a dagger and cut off his opponent's nose on the spot. Then, take advantage of the chaos to escape, returned to the village, found here has become a mess. All his father's cronies have been killed, and even his mother has been kidnapped by Hasem. The soldier, whose nose had been cut off, did not complete the task and had to lie to Green about his death in order to save his life. Grim had to go out to sea and escape by boat. On the way, he vowed to avenge his parents. Time flies, 20 years went by. Grim originally has royal blood, plus the moment to remember the enemy killed his father. The heart has been hard as iron, his growth rate is faster than anyone. He joined the other on the way. On the run has been the Viking troop, the soldiers in the war, before calling upon the inner wildfire rituals, which broke out in a strong fighting capacity. Grim from urine was the baptism of the Ares, flowing in the ceremony of the blood of prophets' ancestors, force of blood. Further awakening his fighting capacity has reached its mortal peak, quickly grew into a valiant soldier. Ferocious and ruthless, he followed his comrades into the nearby clan, killing and looting. On that day, Grim and his crew took down a clan. In the evening of the celebration, Grimm seemed to be inspired by something and walked out of the camp. Then he had a vision and a temple appeared. He met a mysterious witch inside. In the other's words, Grimm remembered his oath and the body bare the mission of revenge. The witch told Grimm's fate. She will kill Hazem in a crater to complete revenge. But the premise of Grimm's success is to find an Excalibur. Only under the help of Excalibur to defeat Hazem is possible. The next day, Grimm from soldiers that Sam had been defeated by Norway's King Harald. Alleged killers people kill constant. Robbing and killing is a formula for the land. Only the Rotary saw Sam's head and was occupied by the other party as a result of his kingdom, was forced to lead your wife and children, and some slaves fled to Iceland. Grimm learned of the situation and decided to go to Iceland to seek revenge. So Grimm branded himself with a slave mark, then chased down a slave ship, looking for a chance to blend in. One of the slaves, Alvo, saw the difference in Grimm at a glance. On the way, the boat encountered a storm and began to shake violently. Alvo was about to fall into the sea, but Grimm stepped forward to pull it back, and the two became inseparable. Soon the ship landed and a party of slaves was taken to the island, where Hassan was gathering men to build a home that might not otherwise survive the winter. Grimm managed to stay because of his strong body. After all these years, even Grimm's mother didn't recognize her son, so she had another son with Hazem. Hazem had two sons, both of whom were full of aristocratic style, and who maintained their high AIRS even after being driven far from home and into the wilderness. In a nearby cave lived a sorcerer who had been a friend of the prophet of the kingdom. After the death of the old king, Hazem cut off the prophet's ears and tongue and gouged out his eyes, but with the help of the sorcerer, the prophet's head was kept and he was able to survive through consciousness. He told Grimm that the Sword of the Covenant came from a tribe of war maniacs called the Hill, and that they had fashioned it from rare metal and exotic bones, so sharp that it could only be pulled out at night. Following the prophet's guidance, Grimm went to the tomb of the Hill people. A powerful Promethean guarding the sword, the unarmed Grimm was no match and nearly died here. But as Grimm soon discovered, Prometheans have one problem: they can't see the moonlight. Grimm took advantage of this and successfully decapitated it. In a blink of an eye, Grimm was still standing in front of the sleeping mummified corpse. It turned out that all this was a spell. He successfully got the Sword of the Pledge, but the so-called Burning Lake did not appear. So he hid the sword and remained there as a slave, waiting for the fateful day. Then the relationship between Grimm and Alvo changed. As the two men are the slaves of the same two, plus Grimm saved all my life, so the latter especially appreciate to him, even has produced a declaration of love. One day, the Sam's eldest son Jack, in order to add fun to live, organized a special body hit the ball game in a group of slaves to find two people in order to compete for front row or ball, the so-called competition. It's basically slaves fighting each other with sticks until one of them dies, pleasing their masters with their own lives. Grimm, a strong man, was chosen to join one of the groups, and as the commander gave the order, the two groups quickly fought together. Grimm, after all, was a man who had been to the war against this rabble. That's easy. At the end of the battle, he was left alone with another strong man. In the course of confrontation between the two men, an accident happened. Hassem's youngest son suddenly could not sit still and rushed into the field with a stick. The red-eyed man, who had already killed him, went up and knocked the little prince down and was about to kill him. At the critical moment, Grimm stood out and knocked down the opponent with a fist, successfully saving the little prince. Grimm is also recognized by Hassem and Jack for this, in addition to helping him reduce his work, but also allow Grimm to choose a woman from the slaves. Without even thinking about it, Grimm chose Alvo directly, and the relationship between the two heated up dramatically that night. They grew up together, and through this harmonious intercourse, Grimm now trusts Alvo enough to inform him of his plans. The next night, Grimm began his revenge by infiltrating the soldiers' camp. The soldiers who killed Jack's men put their bodies together and nailed them to the cabin. The second day, early in the morning, that the situation of Jack instant rage is to find out the murderer for the soldiers' revenge. Then The witch, to see the dead injury, found the murderer is a little different with the knife, seems to be not from this world, realized that things tricky. She found a young girl, going to evening sacrifice, that which at night just done sacrifice before preparation, suddenly came out sharp cry wolf. With the wolf, the sound in the camp dogs will suddenly become violent. The exorcism is terminated after an attack on the humans. Grim rushes into the sacrifice site, kills the god Guan, ties up the witch, saves the girl about to be sacrificed, and disappears into the night. When people came out, they found the guards outside had been hung and disemboweled. The message of the spirits spread like poison throughout the kingdom. The next night, Alvo secretly put poisonous mushrooms into the broth, and the defenders killed each other in their hallucinations and fell to their swords. While the camp chaos, Grim secretly slip into his mother's boudoir, tell each other his identity. Grim wanted to take her away, but got a surprising news. Originally, her mother was the slave her father had caught, and she had been fed up with the atrocities of the other side, and Hazem began to usurp power, which also has the credit of the mother. She secretly instigated and informed Hazem's husband alone with his son to the temple whereabouts. The amount of information is too much for Grim to take in. He turns and runs out of the camp. As he passes Jack's room, Grim kills him without hesitation and takes his heart. Grim finds Alwo, inform the other side of the situation. At present his identity has been exposed. To avoid involvement to Alwo, Grim let her hurriedly look for an opportunity to escape. The next day, early in the morning, Hazem knew the news that his son had been killed. From the queen's mouth, he knew the true identity of Grim. Then he gathered the slaves together and forced them to question him. Alvo could not bear to see his companion die, and finally stood out. Alvo is about to be executed. Grim came back. He claimed to take Jack's heart for Alvo a life. Before Hazem promised, Grim came forward with weapons against his men. Alvo took advantage of this opportunity to decisively flee the scene, and he was soon caught. At this point, Hazem found Grim hand is not the heart of his son. See each other vowed not to say the whereabouts of the heart. Hazem will first lock it in the stable, ready to handle the funeral of the eldest son and then execute him. At night, the campfire was blazing, and everyone at the funeral was solemn. Grim, who was hanging in the stable, was freed from the ropes with the help of crows. Then he fainted to the ground and saw the Lord God Odin behind him. Valkyrie led him on a gallop across the wasteland. When Grim woke up, he found himself lying in a hot spring, rescued not by Valkyrie, but by his lover Alvo. Under the persuasion of the other side, Grim decided to put down hatred, fled with Alvo here. In the ship leaving, Grim kissed Alvo's wound. Through the blood, he felt that the other side has his own flesh and blood, that is his offspring, the descendants of the royal family. This moment Grim just realized that the ring of fate cannot be avoided. Hazem will issue a reward, so escape. The child can only live in the water. He must go back for the sake of his child's future. Kiss goodbye to his lover in tears, he jumped back to the tribe and killed his father's enemies to do the final end. Under the protection of darkness, he easily killed all the defenders and freed the imprisoned slaves. Hazem knew that Grim would not stop, so he hid the queen and the second prince together. Knowing that Grim would not harm women or children, the queen attacked him, and eventually he stabbed his birth mother in the chest and slit his brother's throat. Late arrival of Hazem despaired looked at a messy, sad convergence of relatives after the body but calmed down. His battle with the Grims, the gates of hell, the final battle between the two kings, is the crater of Iceland, the burning fire that the witches call it. Right at the right time, Grim knew it was time to fulfill his destiny, and the two of them dragged naked, like two beasts fighting for their lives. Is Asgard the Avengers, one is elderly composed of kings, is collected at the foot of the blood of the magma, two people, Ewan hosted by Odin Bang Skyfire, fulfilled his destiny step by step, that is to Valhalla stare of the Valhalla, their turn undead ghost Valkyrie holding the reins tightly, and kiss with honey wine warrior's death. All hatred, all fate ends here. In this battle of blood and fire, Grim outmaneuvered his own uncle by cutting off his head. Unfortunately, he was also the other side of the breakdown chest fell to the ground, confused to stay. Grim thought of Alvo can take their children, safe life. He finally closed his eyes. Nordic myth has some original European civilization savage fighting spirit, enthusiasm, do not fear death, ancestor worship, and so on, which conforms to its poor geographical environment for the shaping of culture, cannot be engaged in agriculture. In turn, Kant's system are derived from the agricultural civilization of no fixed abode with nomadic life, and can make the interpersonal relationship is very unstable. So in Northern Europe, the kingdom of the noblemen quarreled with each other, and the story emerged endlessly. That's the end of the story. Don't forget to subscribe for more awesome videos to come.